Great. So as I said, the workshop this evening is focusing on writing the grant application. I'm going to specifically focus on online applications because we're all familiar of downloading the application form and completing it on a Word document or a PDF document, and sending it out that way. But I'm going to go through the online application process this evening with you. So the difference between an online application and the presentation. So the difference between an online application and a regular application that you would have sent in previously. So an online application would be either through a dedicated portal, so it would be a specific site that you would go into and complete the application form online, or it would be maybe possibly an emailed application. Okay. With the online applications, all your supporting documentation that you're required to submit with the application form, things like your accounts and your reports, constitution, bank statements, anything like that, all have to be uploaded to the portal or emailed as an attachment with the application form. So you can't just have a hard copy of the application, or sorry, the documentation and post it. It has to be all submitted digitally. So it's important then that you have that documentation in digital format stored on your PC or laptop, whatever. Usually they're more condensed application forms. So in a way, sometimes they're actually easier to complete than a regular application form, because you're limited in the number of words or characters that you're allowed to type in, and it's got that built into the system, so it doesn't allow you to type anymore. So you're kind of forced to kind of condense your wording and your description. So sometimes that can be a good thing where you're struggling to find anything to put on the application form, but it can also be a problem if you're trying to give more and more information about the project and explain it in more detail. You might be limited in the number of words that you can use. So, for example, Sports Capital application, which is an online application form on a portal, they have very restricted number of words that you can put in to give a description of your project. So it's very hard to explain a full large-scale project in a very short kind of paragraph, and that can cause problems for people who are trying to summarize it. The location details, normally with the online applications, your location details are linked to an airport. So if you put in your airport or your coordinates of your site or your building or whatever, you would automatically find that on a map. So again, you just put in before your address and your airport. With these online portals, it basically finds your address on the map and shows the address and location on the map. You have to sign the application forms digitally, so kind of an automatic and digital signature, which is where you submit the application. It's considered, when you tick the box, it's considered your signature. Others, then you have to actually sign it. So if it's a signature that's required on an email application, you need to have your signature in digital format as well. So you can just paste it onto the actual form itself. With the online applications, there is a very strict deadline, because usually with a portal, the portal closes at the deadline time. So if the deadline, say 5 o'clock on Friday, that portal, the website, the online portal with the application form on it, won't be available after that deadline. So when you go into the portal after the deadline, you won't be able to access it. Say the portal is closed, the application is closed. So if you miss the deadline, you actually miss the deadline. There's no kind of, I'll email it Monday morning because we forgot to email it on Friday. If it's online, those deadlines are strict. Once the application form is submitted online and you kind of go and send, it's gone. Then you can't edit it. Okay, so now it does give you lots of warnings. Asking, are you sure you want to submit the documentation? Are you sure that you want to submit the application form? So you can't really, it's difficult enough to do it by accident. Now, I know some people who have submitted the application form when it wasn't complete by accident. I don't know how they managed it, but they did, because it does come up a lot of warnings before you submit it. You can go in and edit these application forms. You can go in, fill in some of the application forms, save it, and come back another day and complete it and finish it. But it's important that you're saving the work as you go along, otherwise you're going to lose all the content you put in there. And that can be an issue as well. If you've got poor broadband and your broadband or your internet connection is unstable, that can cause a problem too, because you could lose whatever you put in there. But again, it can be edited as you go along. You can give access to other people to the application form as well, so you can do it in Teams if you want to. The advantages and disadvantages, The advantages, it may be shorter, so less content to be included, less writing basically. It's easier to manage the process. So if you're uploading all the files, that's actually easier to do than to gather files and post them, because you also get a track record of what you actually submitted and you've attached on the application form. Teams can work on the application, or teams can work on a regular application too, but with the online applications, you can get access to other people to go in and edit it. I suppose it does level the playing field, because the online application forms are simplified. They don't give a lot of scope for, say, giving a lot of information, or kind of maybe attaching maybe additional documentation or whatever, or proposals or business plans. So previously, let's say written applications, a lot of groups were using professionals or consultants to write application forms for them. They would put in very kind of flowery language, write them very, very well, present them very, very well. And groups who could afford that would have an advantage over groups who couldn't afford it. With the online applications, it's kind of a standardized system. So there's very kind of scope there to kind of include more information they've asked for. So that does level the playing field somewhat. Some applications have autofill sections, which makes it easier to complete. So, for example, when you're using the financial section of the application form, it actually calculates the totals for you. Again, small thing, but sometimes you can be prone to mistakes in filling out these forms. And I've seen a lot of groups where they put in maybe the costings on an application form and they totaled them incorrectly. And the total amount that they saw didn't match the actual breakdown of the costs. Does it mean they won't get approved for funding? Possibly. They might come back and look for clarification on the costings, but then again, they mightn't. With the automatic autofill on the online applications, that reduces some of that kind of error. And in some cases, all your paperwork is in the one portal. So, for example, in the sports capital funding, you have a situation where you've got it's called the OSCR system, and the OSCR system is where you all your paperwork, all your files in one location. So, if you go into the OSCR system of the sports club, you can look at all the applications you've submitted in the past, the files you've uploaded, the information that you've provided, and all your grant drawdown process is done through that as well. So it's a good way of kind of a good filing system for accessing all your documentation in relation to that grant. I suppose it does kind of force groups into being more efficient in completing the application form. So because they're trying to reduce the amount of I suppose rubbish really some people are putting in the application forms, they do kind of limit the number of wording, the amount of words you can put in or the characters. That does, you get better in terms of summarizing your project and the detail, because they don't want to be reading loads and loads and loads of words and information about the project. They just want people to get straight to the point. So it does allow you it does allow you to do that, and does make you more efficient in what you're putting in. In terms of disadvantages, sometimes the word count is too low, so it actually makes it very difficult to put in enough information to actually sell your project. You do have to have, I suppose, it does require greater editing skills. So some systems have limited editing format options, so you can't really edit the actual words on the application on the screen itself. What I would normally recommend is that you do the application form on a Word document in terms of the wording, edit it there, do the proofreading there, do the word count there, and then just cut and paste into the application form. Now, I recommend that for two reasons. One, it allows you to edit the application, the wording. It also allows you to monitor the word count. But also, some of these applications, they don't allow you to print the application, or you don't have actually access to the application afterwards. So it's a good way of actually keeping a record of what you actually submitted. So it's literally kind of a version of the application form in a Word document with all the wording, what you applied for, so you have it then to access next time. That's important because, again, most application forms will look for similar information. So if you've done one already on a Word document, you just cut and paste that into the next application. Again, you may require passwords and login to access the portal. Now, that's a small thing, you might think, right? The amount of people who forget their passwords and login access, and then when it comes to actually doing the application form last minute, normally, they can't remember what the password was or trying to log in, they can't log in. And they got to ring the department and say, look, I lost my login details. Can I get, reset, whatever? That's fine if it's like maybe a few days out, but if it's on the day of the application process, that's kind of cutting it way too fine. So again, what we recommend people do is that they have their passwords and logins for the portal on a separate file. So all the information they're putting together for the grant, they also have the password and login on that file as well. Big issue with online applications, if you don't have good broadband, it can become a bit of a problem. So if your broadband is slow or your connection is not reliable, you will have situations where you have a lag, so there's a bit of delay. And sometimes the online application portals, if there's a delay, it presumes that you basically walked away from the screen, and it sometimes basically just shut down or automatically log you out, which is a disaster if you haven't saved your work. Where the broadband becomes a massive issue is on the day the application be submitted. Let's say, for example, you're due to submit the application on Friday by 5 o'clock, and you say, okay, my application's done. I'll submit it Friday morning at 10 a.m. being plenty time. And then on that day, your broadband's gone down, your broadband connection's gone in the whole house or in your office or wherever, and all you're panicking because you can't actually get access to the internet to actually send the application form. So, you can't obviously foresee that happening, but if you leave it to the last minute, that can be a problem. Or if you leave it to the very last minute and your broadband connection is slow, you might get it off in time. You might have clicked send with 3 minutes to go to the deadline, and it might take about 5 minutes for them to go because of your broadband so slow. So there's an issue. It does require some sort of, I suppose, knowledge of IT. Now, you don't have to be a software wizard or a computer programmer or developer to do this stuff, but it does require some level of knowledge of technical ability, where file uploading, saving files as PDF documents, moving back and forth between applications, is very straightforward. But if you're not used to using computers, that can be a bit of a nightmare for you. Typically, you're trying to find someone that can do it. But again, some people are just better than others, and they're more comfortable in using the actual online application and the formats than others are. The restrict deadlines, as I said, and then some of the applications, as I said as well, you can't print them or you can't save them for sharing purposes. So again, as I said, I recommend do them in Word first, have them as a copy in a Word document in terms of wording, that you can use later on or show your committee or whatever, or just have reference back to when you're looking to see what you applied for. So preparation is key, as we said last week. Absolutely very, very important with an online application because everything is online, everything's digital format. So have all the required documentation in one place, create a project file, save the copies of any documents on that project file, store it on a OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox, whatever, so you've access to it anywhere, especially if you're working with teams, that your team has access to it as well. As I think I said last week, it's not a good idea to have all your files in one location on one laptop or on one USB drive or something like that, because if that laptop is broken or lost or stolen, you can't access those files anymore. So have them in a cloud file somewhere, or cloud sharing file somewhere. I would recommend use the same login and passwords. No, I don't recommend that for personal things or banking details or anything like that, but for grant applications, use the same login and passwords for everything, because it's just so much easier to remember them. Again, agree on who's the contact for the application. So if you're putting a person down as a contact person on the application form, this is really, really important, because it's a simple thing, but it can cause mayhem when it comes to applications. Let's say I'm the person who's been nominated in the committee to be the contact person. First of all, I need to be aware that I'm the contact person, and I need to agree that I'm the contact person, okay? Secondly, I need to make sure that the email address that I'm using on the application form, okay, the email that I'm putting down on the application form is an email that I use regularly, okay? Not an email that I would use maybe or drop in and out of every now and again, right? Or if I don't check my emails regularly, that's a huge issue. The reason why it's an issue is that they will be contacting you via email, okay? If they contact you via email and you're not checking your emails, you won't be able to respond to any queries they may have, okay? Or any updates they might be giving you, or any information they might be giving you in relation to the project. We were dealing with a project recently where the person was sent an email about a deadline for any changes they want to make to their contract and to the awarding of the grant. So they've been approved for the grant. They had to email by a certain date, and it was cut-off date for any changes to be made. She didn't see the email, and she missed that deadline. And because of it, they actually lost some of the grants that they were hoping to draw on. because she used an email that was a personal email that she very rarely checks. So again, to make sure it's a very simple thing, but can cause a lot of problems. Make sure your email address is correct. The amount of people that put all the wrong email addresses is unforgivable. Again, same with contact numbers. Make sure your contact numbers are correct as well. Key thing to make sure the person who's contact knows they're a contact person, and make sure they're also available. No point having someone that's like a volunteer that is only involved every now and again in the organization, or is going on holidays or going away for a while, or is resigning sometime soon or retiring sometime soon. Have someone that's going to be dealing with the project on a day-to-day basis as a contact. If you are giving editing access to other people on your committee or on your group, I don't like that. I don't like when too many people are writing an application, and the reason being is that sometimes they'll repeat themselves in the application form. So one person says one thing and the other person says the exact same thing in another question. Also, you find as well that the format is kind of different. They're kind of the way they write, and the way they phrase things are different. So the application kind of form kind of feels very bitty and kind of put together. So it's not the wisest thing to do. Normally, what we recommend is that a couple of people put the application form together in terms of a Word document. They send it to one person, that then person edits that document then into kind of makes sense of it and just kind of ties it up. So a lot of people would send me information about their project, because obviously if I'm doing grant for them, I have to get information from them. So they'll all send me stuff and information in every sort of format. I just take all that, edit it into something that makes sense, and then put that into relevant sections of the application form. You've also got the issue there that the number of people are working on the application form, and they might get their part done in time, or they might say, look, I didn't get a chance to do it, I didn't do it, and now you're stuck panicking and rushing to get it completed. Again, make sure your deadline date is put into your diary and highlight it, and make sure you set a deadline date before that to get completed, so that that should be in time. So it's like kind of setting your alarm clock, for an hour earlier in the morning, just in case. Same with the application forms. We normally would set a deadline 3 to 4 days out from the deadline, so we know it's done as completed. Review the guidelines carefully. Highlight any key criteria requirements on that. So typically what we do is we print off the guidelines, have them next to us on the desk, highlight with a highlighter any important key kind of criteria, any key wording that they're looking for, any kind of specific information on the criteria or the guidelines that are really relevant. So we know that that's kind of they're kind of saying to us, this is what we want to see. I'll make sure then that there's enough of that in the application form. So I'll go backwards and forwards to make sure that the key criteria, the software in the application is completed. So I can double check that a couple of times to make sure that we are using the terminology, we are saying the right things on the application. Okay, the filing system I would use will be something like this. So this will be like this will be a kind of sample file. So what I would do is when I get the information off the clients or the group, I normally just basically save everything in as a PDF document. Now for this one I didn't do it, but sometimes I'll actually have no spaces and stuff. So I just like have annual accounts as one word. I won't have any spaces, just in case their system doesn't recognize blank spaces on a file name. Typically they would, but sometimes I leave nothing to chance, so I'd have them all as one word with no spacing. I don't use things like say dashes or hyphens like that, because again, I don't know if their systems will actually read those files. So I keep it very straightforward. So this is all the information like the annual accounts, bank statements, feasibility study that was be completed with for the application, memos after association that will be submitted with the application. The guidelines I would also have in the file, sample quotations for the project, and tax clearance details. So they normally would look for annual accounts, bank statements, memos, articles, quotations, and tax clearance. So they're all in this file. But you also see that the other information that's relating to the grant as well, like the application guidelines, are also on this file. So everything's in one location. I don't have to go back and forth all the time. And this edit document then will be the document that I'm actually editing the application on, as kind of the working document, edit document that I would use, and then cut and paste all that into the application itself. So it's a very simple filing system. It just means that when I'm uploading information onto the portal, I'm not going back and forwards trying to go in all the files, trying to find the right files. They're all in one location. Makes it very simple. If I want to go back and see what we submitted, it's very simple. If I want to go back and look at getting a file from this file location and put into another grant file, it's very easy to do it. So it speeds up the whole process really for me. And it's something that I really recommend you do. It's a very simple thing to do, doesn't take any time. It will save you an awful lot of time and heartache when you're rushing to get a file an application in. So portals then. So most applications now have a portal or a hub where the applications are completed, right? So, but this again is important because these portals require registration. Okay, so you have to register to go on these portals, and you have to register and you have to be able to log in to get access to them. Sometimes they have a deadline for the registration process. Okay, so that will be before the actual deadline for the grant. So with the sports capital funding applications on OSCAR, you have to register. If you're a first-time user, first time on the system, you have to register your club on the OSCAR system. Okay, and there's a deadline normally about 2-3 weeks before the actual application deadline to do that. Some people don't realize that, and when they go to the application and go on the OSCAR system, they can't register, so they missed the boat basically for that year. And that could be another 12 or 14 months before that application opens up again. So again, normally with every application now, there's usually a lot of guidelines. There's normally kind of webinars about how to do the application, how to register. So there's no real reason, unless you literally ignored it, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do these things on time. So the additional content, so I'm going to go through in a few minutes the actual process of the online application and going through the application form. Just what I would recommend to have is some generic information, right? So as I said, most application forms now are standard enough. They ask the same questions, they look for the same level of detail. So once you do one, you kind of got a lot of the kind of the groundwork, where the back is broken pretty much on a lot of the work you need to do for each application. So the first one's always the hardest because that's you're gathering everything, putting everything together. After that, then it's literally in a lot of cases cut and paste. Because a lot of this information is just generic to every application. There's nothing's going to change there. So the first thing I suppose is, and we showed this last week, is your previous grant template. So nearly every application will ask you what grants you've received in the past and ask for details on that. So when you get a grant, just fill in this template, what grant it was, where it came from, when it was received, what was it for, and what was the amount. Okay, that's the most important things, because that's what we ask for in the application forms. So if you've that done already, then it's very, very quickly, you just basically take that information, put it into the application form. The organization structure, every application will ask you for details about your structure and your governance structure. So again, we would write up a bit about the experience of the board or committee or management team or whatever, the track record in terms of your experience in managing projects, getting funding, managing public funds, achieving projects at a local level, your operational structure, which be like, say, if you've got staff, you've got a manager, coordinator, administrator, or staff workers, security volunteers, or STEAM workers, your management and evaluation, how you manage projects, how you evaluate them, and then your experience in managing public funds. So I would recommend every group, doesn't matter how small or big you are, because you need to put this information in there, is that you would start writing this stuff up before, like pretty much now really, so it's ready to go when an application comes up. And I spend a bit of time with it, so it's not rushed. So you're preparing this well in advance. I would always show a sample organizational chart. So this would be like, say, maybe community center or whatever. Voluntary board of directors, central manager, executive committee, possibly fundraising and marketing committee, possibly admin support, family support team, environmental team. So whatever structure you might have. We're working with a group at the moment who are doing their Tight Towns group, or a Tidy Village group, they're calling themselves. They have a voluntary board. They have a number of different committees or teams. So they've got like maybe like a finance committee, fundraising team, and then they have a number of teams in to do tidy ups. So they have a number of teams that they rota to do tidy ups every week within the village, and cleanups every week in the village. And then if they're developing a project, then they form a project management team. So if they're going to say a building project, like maybe garden furniture, or maybe public ground project, or to work with the council on maybe footpaths or street lighting, they have a project working on that. So it's very visual to the person assessing the application. The structure is there, okay? Now some people like more of a flat structure. I used to use this because it's easier to visualize the structure when you use a chart like this. So as I said, put these things together because you will be asked for these in the application form. So it's just easier to take your time, write them out, and have them ready to go and cut and paste when you're doing the application. As I mentioned last week, every application form now will look for how your project is aligned to national and local strategy. So again, we will put in here in terms of your typically what you're referring to will be like national development policies, county development plans, county tourism strategy, if it's tourism project, your municipal district local area plan, if it's an outdoor project, maybe outdoor recreation plan, and then if it's relating to the environment, climate action plan. So these are kind of your policies that government want to see and funders want to see that you're aligned to, and then ask you how you're aligned to them. Okay, so they used to really ask that before, now they do. So it's important to understand how your project fits in with them. And again, you can't just put in like a one-liner saying that, oh, our project, is aligned to national and local policy. They're not going to accept that. They want a bit more information, just you saying to me, And a lot of people do it from one-liners because they can be bothered, or they don't know what to put in, or they can be bothered putting anything in, and it's not any funding. So it's worth taking your time and doing these things properly. I think I showed this last week. Again, what we would do is we would recognize or look at, identify the various different policies that our project relates to, and then literally find the objectives within those policy documents or the aims within those documents and see which ones are relevant to our project. Because what we would do is literally cut and paste this type of table into the application form. Okay, so we can see very visually that this project is meeting all the objectives nationally and locally, and they've highlighted where they're meeting them. So again, this is not a kind of a it'd be nice thing to have this as kind of a must because they do look for it. So none of the things I'm talking about this evening are extras. These are kind of now pretty much kind of standard stuff that's looked for in every application form. Matching funds, again, you have to be able to show matching funds. Percentage that's required in terms of matching funds would be outlined in the criteria, and you have to be able to show that within your application form. So if you're looking, say, applying for a grant, say if you've got a project that's 100,000 euros and you're applying for 80,000 euros or 80% grant aid, you've got to show where 20% is. If you can't show 20% and prove that you have it, then you're looking at a situation where you're not going to be so the options would you need to include then would be, say, your money held in an account, so any reserves or savings you might have from, say, fundraising. Again, they'll be shown in the bank account. If you've got a loan, they'll want to see details of the loan, a loan approval from the bank. If it's a bridging loan or term loan, again, what the conditions are, the repayments every month, the repayments every month, and the term of the loan as well. They want that written and provided by the bank, whether it be a commercial bank or a social bank. And then where you've got in-kind contributions, again, you need to look at what their requirements are in terms of proof of those. So if there's a property valuation that you're putting in as matching funds, they normally probably require that to be done by an independent valuer or the estate agent to value the property. If it's voluntary labour, again, they'll have probably guidelines in relation to what you need to provide in terms of proof of that voluntary labour and how it's going to be monitored. Okay, so these are things again that would be sought and looked for. There's no point in to them, we don't have it at the moment, but we will have it by the time we get the grant. It has to be shown to be there on the day you put the application in. They won't accept your word for it. They'll want proof, and the proof has to be bank statements or loan approval. Right, so then certain things in certain applications, then I'm not going to go through this in detail slide because there's a lot of words there, but this has been recorded. So the purpose of this is so that you have this yourselves to use similar wording, or when I send you on the slides, you can take some of the wording here. So a lot of people struggle with the terminology on application forms, okay? So things like measure and impact, they don't really know what that means, or they know what it means, but they don't know how they can actually show the impact of the project or outline what the impact of the project will be on an application form, right? So this is a sample taken from a disability project that we worked on for a number of years here in Kerry with an organisation who worked with young adults with intellectual disabilities, and this was I think it was an application form for maybe it was program funding for a online program and tutoring, if I recall. So what we put in was like, okay, so young people with intellectual disabilities need routine and structure. Any isolation from their social network, tutors and personnel assistance has profound effects on young people. So this was around COVID when we had to shut down our premises and the services went online. Okay, and we need to get funding to kind of get these services online. So we were showing that basically, like, you know, the using technology to facilitate young people ID to engage, interact online, reduce anxiety, depression, loneliness, and fear. So we're showing the impact on their mental health and their physical health. Okay, we gave the number of people, so 30 young people will be involved directly in the program. But then we said indirectly that their families, their parents and siblings, their carers, their other service providers, special assistants in their schools, if they're working employers and people in the community would also benefit from this program. Now we didn't put a number on that because you can't. It's impossible. They're going to put a quantity on that. But we said 30 people would directly benefit. We showed how we would measure. So there's no point in saying this would be the impact. We were showing how we'd actually measure that impact. Okay, so the impact outcomes will be measured by analysing the engagement by participants, so numbers of people logging into courses, time staying online, the engagement with programs, etc., and then ongoing feedback from the actual participants themselves and from people using the site, so tutors and trainers as well using it. So what we showed basically in the application form was it gave an overview in terms of what the direct impact would be on the person themselves, the indirect impact. We quantified as much as possibly can in terms of direct impact, and then we showed them how we actually measure that impact. Okay, so again, you can use similar wording like this in your applications as well. The next question people struggle with in a lot of applications would be, you know, if they ask the question, will the project proceed without funding? Most people will say no, it won't. Some people say yes, it will, and then you can put in the option of in a limited capacity. In my experience, if we're asked that question or if we're filling an application form, we normally don't say no, the project won't happen without funding, okay? Because what you're kind of saying to them there is you're kind of putting a gun to their head, basically saying, look, that if you don't give us funding, it's not going to happen, right? Now, if I'm the one reading that application form and I'm assessing the application form, I'm pretty much thinking they're banking everything on us, right? They're putting all their eggs in this basket here. If we don't give them funding, this won't go ahead, okay? Which means that I'm asking myself the question then, have they tried looking for money elsewhere? Have they thought about fundraising? Or are they basically relying on us completely to raise money for this project? And it's going to start raising doubts in my mind about the project in terms of capacity, in terms of, and its viability. If they're completely reliant on grant aid and they have no other source of funds or no other source of funds looked at for this project. So what I tend to put in there is that it will happen in a limited capacity, okay? So what I put in here is, this is sample wording from another project. So we have demonstrated that there is an immediate identified need for the project, okay? Without full funding, this project can only be developed on a phased basis at a greatly reduced number of people participating. The only option to proceed at the required scale without funding is to secure a social finance loan. The repayments, however, will be put our existing sustainable annual budgets at risk. I'm saying three things in that paragraph. One is that we've proven there's a need for it and the project needs to go ahead. I'm saying that we will do it anyway, but we have to do it on a greatly reduced basis and a lot of people won't be able to benefit from it. And I'm saying the third thing is that we will have to borrow money, which puts our normally sustainable budget at risk, okay? That's better than saying, no, it's not going to go ahead, right? And then what we would normally put in as well is something like this. In summary, we are committed to this project and meeting the needs of our young people in our community. But with the funding and support of whatever the agency is, we could do so much more and have much wider impact and make a real difference to the lives of vulnerable young people. So we're again saying we're going to do this anyway, but with your money, we can do so much more with it, okay? That to me is a stronger argument than someone saying, yes, we can go ahead with it without any money, because you won't be saying that, or saying, no, we can't do it. You're not giving yourself an opportunity to kind of sell it more to them, right? You're basically saying by these two paragraphs, saying, look, we're driving on with this, we have to drive on because there's a need for it there, we have to do it regardless, but it would make so much more difference and be so much better if you funded it or part funded it. Like if you're the person assessing that application, which would you kind of rather be backing? The ones that have kind of saying we're going to do it anyway and we're going to try our best, or the ones say like, if you don't give us the money, we're not going to do it. Again, it's just, these are all assessed by human beings. So you try to tap into their minds and try to encourage them to actually support it. So just again, if you're struggling with that question, what should I put in? I would put in wording like this, okay? The question of displacement, again, comes up a lot. Is your project going to displace another project? Is your project being done by someone else locally in our community? Again, this is standard wording we would use. So we as a voluntary board continue to engage with our community, our stakeholders, other organizations operating in the community. Where possible, we collaborate with other organizations, and we also support other organizations through referral systems. There's key words that we have in this paragraph here. The first one is engage with, which government wants to see people engage with each other and collaborate with each other and working together. We use the word collaboration in there. We've used the word we support other organizations. A big issue for government in terms of funding is value for money, right? The more people that are benefiting from the money they give out, the better. The more collaboration at community level, the better as well. So government likes to see kind of multi-purpose facilities, multi-activity going on. They want to see organizations working together and referral and support each other. So not everyone's not doing their own thing in their own corner looking for money first. So by using words engagement, collaboration, support, that shows that we're not displacing anyone, we're actually supporting and adding to it. And then the last paragraph there is another one. We endeavor to maximize the supports coming into our community and look to achieve value for money through partnerships and joint initiatives. Rather than displace or compete with other projects or organizations, we are seeking funding will complement the existing services provided with our communities. Okay, again, you're making the argument there that we're adding value to what's already there. We're supporting them, we're collaborating, and we're complementing what they do. Okay, very difficult for someone that's assessing this to say, oh, they're displacing the project, or they're competing with another project for money, or there's duplication on there. In no way could you read that into that. If you read that paragraph, could you read that into it? So it's really important that you use the application form to sell your project. And by using wording like this, and by going back and arguing every point, it's helping you sell the project. Because you're not in front of these people selling the idea to them. You're not giving a presentation. Everything has to be in the application form. The more detail you can put in the application form, and in every question continuously sell the project, the better chance you have. So it's a secret selling basically. So people say to me, like, why do you kind of focus on the sales pitch or the selling part in talking about grant applications? Because this is what it is. You're selling your organization to them. They have money. It's like you're trying to get them to buy something from you. You'd be trying to sell it to them. You're trying to sell them your project. They're going to be looking at many poor projects that are looking for funding, and they're going to make a decision which one's going to back and which one's going to go for. So it's like a customer going in to buy a product, or going to buy a car. It's up to the person selling the car to make sure that they buy their car from them, because that's what you need to do. If you're selling your project for funding, and that's what you're doing, you've got to make sure you put your best foot forward. So basically, your application form is a way of it allows you to make the sales pitch. So what they're saying when they give you an application form is, right, give us your sales pitch, give us your pitch, tell us what you want to do. And they'll ask you a number of questions in an application form, and then they'll base their decision based on the answers you give them. Okay. So if you give them rubbish answers, or you don't give them any answers, or very vague answers, they're not going to give you money. Okay. If you overemphasize certain things, if you go over the top and over-egg the application and make it sound to be too unrealistic, they're not going to give you the money. Okay. They want something that's easy to understand, well presented, and makes sense, well thought out, well explained. That's what they want. They want to remember your project at the end of it, and you want them to remember your project at the end of it as well, because you want your project to be funded. So basically, you need to understand the person you're pitching to. Now, what they do is, you don't know who's going to be assessing the application form, because it could be anyone, but they do tell you in the guidelines what they're looking for. Okay, they also tell you what they're not looking for. So if you're going looking, say, for a job, and you're applying for a job, and you look at the job description, and there's keywords in the job description, you're going to make sure at the job interview that you throw back those keywords to them. So if they say in your job description, have the very good interpersonal skills, somewhere in the interview process, you'll be saying, I've got great interview skills, or I was, in my previous job, I had to demonstrate I have good interview skills or presentation skills or whatever, right? You're using the keywords they're giving you in the job description, and you're throwing it back at them at the interview. In the application form, they're giving you guidelines with keywords that they want to see. if they say the word collaboration, if they say engagement, if they say, supporting vulnerable people, whatever it is, you're throwing those words back at them throughout the application form. Okay, what's relevant to them? So you need to know by reading the criteria and the guidelines, what is the aim of the project, what's relevant, what's not relevant to them. Okay, so if you're focusing your application form and your content in the answers you're giving, and they're not relevant to what they want to see or what they support, it's a waste of time. Okay, so you're trying to sell them something that you're not going to buy. How does your project benefit their aims? Again, their aims will be very clear on the guidelines, and you need to show them, and you need to put somewhere in wording on the application form that the project you're developing mirrors the aims of the fund, or mirrors the aims of the grant itself, and it reflects the policy that's backing this fund. Okay, so you need to kind of spell it out from. Don't presume that they know that. You're going to say that's okay. Sometimes you'll actually write in the aim. So if the project has got specific aims, you'll actually write down the aim, type in the aim that's on the criteria, and then show how the project is going to benefit that aim. Are there features of your project or meeting their criteria and aims? Again, just highlight that in terms of how your project meets their aims and meets the criteria. Does your project represent value for money? That's a really important thing, because that's what they'll be looking at. Is there value for money here? Okay. If you can only show that a handful of people are benefiting from the money you're going to get, okay, that's not going to really work for you. So you've got to show how the project is providing way more value for money, right? So if we're doing let's say a grant application for a community building, and it's being run by a community group, straight away you're thinking, okay, is it going to be used nighttime only? There's going to be building there, it's not going to be used during the day. And we're putting a lot of money into it, and it's going to limit use. What we'll do in the application form is we'll show how that building is going to be used throughout the day, every day, 7 days a week, for the entire year. And we also show the number of groups that will benefit from that space. So it might be the school, the community group, the active care group, daycare, childcare, preschool, gym, whatever's going in the building. We put in as much as we possibly can, and we bullet point it. So we'll say that the following organizations will benefit from this project. And we might try to find maybe 10, 12, 13, 15 organizations. That's showing real value for money. Okay, so if you've got to say a sports club that's putting in a sports capital application now, or any application for funding, the days of basically the sports club and the members of the club benefiting are gone. You need to show how the rest of the community benefits as well. So the club will say we're making our pitch available for the national school to use during school days, for PE, for community games, for sports days. There's a disability organization that will use it and we made our site accessible. There's older people in the community, they'll use it for walking or for activity. And we make it available for the wider community to use. Okay, that's more value for money than saying we're going to use it for club only, and it's closed from in the morning time to 6 p.m. until the first training session starts. That's not value for money. Again, is the impact of the project, can you easily demonstrate the impact and measure it? In most cases you can. It's very easy to measure impact of any project, because it's very easy to measure numbers of people using it or benefiting from it, and it's very easy to find out how they benefit by asking, just simply asking the question in terms of how has this project made a difference to your life? If it's a childcare facility in a local community, what the impact is. There's an impact on the child who's getting education, social support, whatever, and it's benefiting parents who can go to work because there's childcare provision in their village or their community. So that's one person, and then the family, the parents, and then the local community in terms of local employers because people are working. Schools are benefiting because kids are coming into school, kind of prepared for school because they've gone through preschool or whatever it might be. So you're showing what the impact is. So it doesn't matter what the project is. If it's a Tidy Towns group, what's the impact on the Tidy Towns work? You've got a nicer, tidier, cleaner village. People more respect for the village. If you've got visitors coming to the area, it's impacting on tourism. All these things. It's hard to kind of measure kind of feel good factor, but that is something that you can put in. There's a feel good factor with our community because our community is nice and tidy. And then finally, do they trust you? So they need to be able to trust you. And you're not standing in front of them, so your application form has to kind of show what the trust is. What I mean by that is that, will they trust you to spend the money properly? If you've got a good track record in managing projects, and managing public funds, then they will trust you because they can see you've already done it. If you've got a committee that has got people with financial skills or financial experience or business experience or legal experience, that are actively involved in a committee or a project team or whatever, maybe they want to trust you more. No, it doesn't mean that person's smarter or brighter than the next person, but because they're working in finance or they experience, they presume that they have a bit of knowledge around it. Okay. So the key thing really with this is that you have the capacity to manage a project. In the application form, you need to sell that. It's very important. You mentioned the word project management a number of times and how you're going to manage your projects, because they need to be able to trust that if they award you the grant, when you can draw the grant down, which a lot of people can't do because they lied in the application form, you can draw the grant down, you can spend the money in the right way on what you said you spend the money on, you can keep it within budget, on time, and the paperwork coming back to them in terms of the administration of the drawdown of the grant, which can be fairly bureaucratic, is done properly and on time, right? That's what they want. They want an easy life, right? So you want to show them the application form, give us the money, we'll make your life very easy. We'll make sure that our filing's good, our returns are good, our paperwork is spot on, we won't cause you any problems. That's what they want to see. You need to show that in the application form. Okay, that's just wording, how you're going to manage the project, how you're going to evaluate the project. Okay, so I'll go through that when I go through the application form, what I mean by that. So that's what we do. We look, my job in a lot of cases is when I work for organizations writing grant applications, is that they need to get the money. Okay, so I need to make sure that they're the best possible chance of getting the money. So I do the sales pitch. I put together the application form that's going to give them the best chance. Doesn't guarantee it, but it gives them a good chance. In what I'm doing with you this evening is highlighting what I do for organizations, because anyone could do, it's not like I'm not a brain surgeon. Anyone could do what I'm doing in terms of writing grant applications. The reason why I suppose I'm doing it for so long now, it becomes kind of practice really. So I can test you over and over and over and over again. You kind of get better at it. But there's no reason why anyone shouldn't be able to write a very good application. The person that's actually involved in a project should be in a better position than me to write the application, because they're actually doing the project. They know exactly what it's about. All I'm doing is taking their information and making sense of it. Okay. So the key thing about this evening is really around what are the key things to go into the application form that give you a better chance. Okay. The preparatory work is really important, because no matter how good your application form is, if the supporting stuff isn't there, it won't get assessed. So you can spend a lot of time writing a really good application and be left down because of the fact you don't have supporting documents in place when you need them. Okay, so I'm going to go through. I will stop the share for a second and ask any questions, and then I'm going to go through the two applications with you. Stop the share. Has anyone any questions on what I've discovered so far?
Hi, Tom. I just have a question in relation to match funding.
Yep.
We are developing a community park. We own our site.
Great.
We have phase 1 done, and we have 2 or 3 other phases too. Can we use our site for funding, or should we just go with our letter of offer from whoever we're borrowing from? Or can we do a combination?
It depends on the grant. If they allow you to include the site valuation as part of the matching funds, then you can. If they don't allow that, then you can't. So okay. In certain cases, they will allow the site valuation to be included. So
it's just worth asking. It's just worth asking the question, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Bring them up and say, look, in terms of matching funds, are we allowed to include a site valuation? If they say yes, they normally will say what the conditions are around that in terms of who provides the evaluation or the valuation, sorry. And also, but they'll also then say, you get asked them as well, if you are putting in that as a matching funds, do you have to include that then in the overall cost? Does that make sense? So let's say you're developing the site, right? And let's say you own the site. And you put in the value of the site as you put in the cost of the site as part of the overall cost. So let's say just for number's sake that the site is 100,000 euros. And if you go off and buy a site, you spend 100,000 euros. So you're putting in the project might be costing in another 100,000 euros. So you're saying 100,000 euros for capital works, 100,000 euros site costs, total cost 100,000 euros, matching funds, 100,000 site valuation, And, so are you adding the site valuation onto it?
No, we wouldn't be adding in the costs. It's like we've that paid for a couple of years, so that's grand.
So that's what you ask them is, will they accept that then is an actual, the valuation site against it? Because it's not really money as such.
Okay, and it's obviously so then worthwhile to get the site value by a professional.
Yep. Well, ask them if they, it's probably no harm to do that anyway, because you can say we've already invested this much into the project. But if they allow the site valuation to be included as part of matching funds, they would probably have their own independent valuer, or at least they would look or have a panel of people, because not going to just like your brother, sister, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, neighbor, whatever it could be, state agent. You're saying, I want this site that's worth 20 grand to be valued at 100 grand, sort of thing. So they might want some independent valuation done on it, but ask them, they'll tell you, yeah.
Okay, that's grand. Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Any other questions? No? Oh, Gavin? You're on mute there, Gavin? Yep.
Yeah, sorry. This may be a bit premature. Also, it may be an answer I'll get will be, how long's the string of sausages? I'm just wondering, we're a very small committee, but we've an old hall dating back to 1968, built by voluntary labour. Now, our big thing coming up at some stage is we'll have to plan or try to raise funds for a replacement hall. And I'm just wondering about your services. We're impressed, or we've heard of all that you have prepared, and you're particularly mentioning, obviously, organisations in Kerry that you've worked for. Yeah. Can you at some stage give us an indication of, if we asked you to take us on board or assist us in whatever it is application, how your fees work and what we can expect?
Okay, so
it's maybe a bit premature, but
yeah, I suppose really it's a case of like it really depends on the project, really, Gavin. So like we used this conversation actually before the workshop this evening with another project. It all depends on like the biggest cost there is involved in these things would be the design side. So getting building surveyed, structural surveys done on buildings to see what work needs to be done with them or can be done with them. And then if it's a new build on a new site, what the costs or what the design fees would be for designing them. So that'd be the biggest cost. So then there's like the space you're talking about. What the process normally would be is that you have someone like myself that will be doing the business case to kind of justify the need for it. And then you'd have a design team that would be on the structural surveys of the building, the design side of the building, the costing of the work to be done to the building. And then I come back in then after that with that information that they provide me with and say, okay, it's going to cost €1 million to build it. Where can you get the funding from? How, if you have to borrow the money, how you sustain that, what the business model would be, financial model would be, the impact would be. So that's kind of the work we do. The cost on that really depends on the scale of the project. It could be simple enough money, or it could be crazy money depending on how big the project is. But I can, if you want to drop me an email, again, I can, if you want to give me a bit more detail, I can come back and more detailed kind of proposal onto you.
Thank you.
Yep, perfect. Okay.
And the email, just to olatc.ie.
That's it. Yeah, Thomas. Yeah. Thomas@olatc.ie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Just on that, and again, and I say to all the groups I work with, you don't need to be on some detailed stuff like say feasibility studies and building projects and large projects. You need to bring in professionals like architects, engineers, because you need to have that work done. But like for smaller grant applications, you don't need to be spending money on consultants to do them. You don't at all, because the reason why I say that is because, and that's I do that work, but I don't do for small projects, small applications, because people can do it themselves. Is that you're going to be constantly writing grant applications, so you need to get good at it. So you're not grafting yourself anyway, and you also need to know what was in the application form, because you need to be doing the next one yourself. You can't keep going back to people the whole time, getting grants written for you. So I just would for smaller ones do them yourselves if you possibly can. Practice them. Even if you weren't applying for a grant, do a dummy grant application and just don't submit it. And literally just practice that. Sorry, Anna, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I know this isn't meant to be a sales session, but I'm also interested in your services.
Okay.
So I part of a group. We put together an RRDF funding application, or we tried to earlier this year, but we came unstuck at the match funding as well. And so yeah, I guess it was kind of a two-parter. I guess one is like, yeah, would you be able to advise on kind of sourcing funding? And also we have a lot of I'd say 95% of the work done already.
Okay.
So would you sort of do a kind of a final look over and kind of make suggestions kind of thing, like when most of the work is already done?
Again, like Gavin, if you want to send me an email with the details, and I can look at it for you. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thanks very much. Okay, so let's go back to the share screen, because like what I'm going to do next in the next part of the session is probably going to answer a lot of your questions in relation to the application forms. And one of the application forms I'm looking at is the actual RRDF application. Now, I deliberately picked that application because it is the most complex application form you will complete. And if you can complete that, you can pretty much complete anything. So I'm not going to go through it in great detail because we'll be here till tomorrow morning, but I'm going to go through the type of questions they are asked in those application forms, and the kind of content that you need to provide. So go back to the share screen here again. Okay, so I'm going to make this as big as I can so you can see it. Okay, so this is just for people who might be aware of it, and this is the application you were doing, Anna, I think. So the Rural Regeneration Development Fund. This is kind of the biggest pot of funding that's available for large-scale projects. So the minimum amount of money that you can apply for minimum on the Category 1 RRDF application is $500,000. So they're $500,000 plus projects. So they're a big capital budget projects. Okay. You can only apply for them with either a local authority or a local development company or any publicly funded body. Okay, so most applications we would have done in the past would have been with Ross McGriff, County Council, or a local development company. Okay, so there is a Category 2 application as well, and Category 2 application is for projects that are not ready yet. They're kind of a pre-development stage. And that's to give you funding to go and pay for consultants and for professional fees for designers and stuff to get the project to shovel ready status. So it's ready for it's got planning permission. It's ready to actually get started. And again, like we've been involved in 2 Category 2 applications that got like nearly 400,000 euros to just do, professional fees and consultancy and design work. So they're large scale projects. So they're 8 million, 9 million, 10 million, plus projects in some cases. No, you might think they're not what we're looking for that application form. We never applied for it. The reason I picked this one is because it has most of the questions that will be in every application form, and gives you an idea of what kind of stuff is looked for. So things like also lead applicant is straightforward. The project title, the location of the project. In this case, now I've deliberately taken the names out of this, because I'm aware this is being recorded, and I don't want someone to come back over it and know exactly what project I'm talking about. So I just I removed the town name, so I just put in town, and I removed the county name, I put in county. So if you're looking at county council application form, this is what I'm talking about. So I just remove the details that might show what the project is. This project was 1.6 million in cost, and they were looking for 1.2 million. Well, this project actually is in to be processed at the moment. It's in the assessment stage. They haven't got the announcement yet. Hopefully they will get funded. So again, applicant details, very straightforward. Tax registration number, a lot of groups have no idea what their tax number is. They ring the accountant does get back to them, list them. They don't know what their tax clearance access number is. So again, every project, every group has to have a tax clearance number, access number, TCAN number. Again, have that on file somewhere, write it down so you can just type it in. You don't have to worry about trying to find it. Contact name, again, agree who contact is, what their position is, their number, their email address. Again, I said that earlier on, make sure that the person's name is on there or where they're to contact. It can get quite embarrassing when you put a contact person's name down and they're not aware of it. They get a phone call. They're like, well, I have no idea what you're talking about. It kind of doesn't look good from the department's point of view. In this case, you have to have partners. So again, who partners are. So don't worry about that too much because it won't be in most applications. And then an overview of the project. Now, what this they look for this project, they look for this application is details of the air code and of the coordinates of the project. We would tend to, if there's room in the application form, we would tend to put a map in like that of the location of the project. Okay, now that can be helpful if it's a project, let's say in a town where you're showing where the project located, maybe in relation to other parts of the town, or if it's a county-wide project, or sorry, if it's within a county, again, where the project is in relation to in terms of the county. So, for example, if you're applying for CLOR funding, CLOR is for disadvantaged areas and rural disadvantaged areas, we normally would show on a map where the project is located and show that's actually located in the CLOR area. So again, we just basically show that very clearly on a map. Again, summary of the proposal. So it's basically the background to the actual proposal. This was a project that was developed in 2 phases. There was a community development plan done for the town in 2018 that highlighted a number of issues in the town. One was that there was no flexible space for community groups to use for meetings. There was no remote working space within the town for people who work remotely, or no offices or limited office space within the town as well. So we're showing how the project came to be. And then what the proposal is to build, offering flexible, community building, offering flexible multifunctional space. That's when, and basically we're showing them how it ties in with the actual street line and the other buildings around it. Again, we're showing, offers flexible multifunctional space over 2 stories. So just very brief kind of description from the architect on that. So we would go to the architect and ask the architect to give us a 1 paragraph, short description of what the building is going to be. Again, we're showing the facilities very clearly, showing what they're getting for the investment. Again, make sure that we say the building is fully accessible. We're including the electric vehicle charging points, which is again incorporating UV solar panels, sensor lighting, so it's basically energy efficient building, environmentally friendly, low carbon footprint, etc., 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 which is very important when it comes to getting national funding now. Again, commencement dates and completion dates. Now, again, people would struggle with these type of things on application forms because they don't know when the project is going to start. Normally, what we would put in, if we don't know when the grant is going to be approved, we normally put in proposed start date. We might put in here, on award of grant contract, and then maybe estimated time might be Q4 2022. And then we'll show how long it's going to take. So this project, normally building projects would take, if they go, between tendering and procurement and the actual building would take at least 12 months. Okay, so we put in something relevant there. Why they ask for a start date and completion date is most funds that are available would have to be spent within a time period from a funding point of view. So from a budgeting point of view, the departments would have budget for this fund. It would have to be spent by a certain time. So you can see here that the project can't go beyond Q1 2023. If they feel that your project can't start later than Q1 2023. If they feel that your project isn't in a position to start, they won't give you funding. So key thing with the RDF application is that your project has to have planning permission. If it doesn't have planning permission, you can't apply because they want to make sure the project can get started and won't be delayed. Then we put in key milestones. This is something that we would recommend for every application. What we've done, this table, we would have done a study, feasibility study for this project prior to doing the application for them. And all I did was literally cut and paste the time frame or time scale or project plan from that study into the application form. So what we recommend is do something similar like this for all projects. So all you're doing is you're basically showing them that you're thinking this project through, you're managing from the very, very beginning, right? So site procurement, so if you go back to Ms. Martinez project there, site procurement, that's completed. Building design, let's say in this case, the building design is completed. Planning permission was granted in 2019. They submitted their category 1 application in April of this year. Once funding has been awarded, they'll recruit a project manager, who in turn will, project manager design team, so an architect or engineer. That design team will prepare a tender pack, go to tender, award the contract construction. Construction will commence. to complete it, fit out and launch. So it's going through very, very clearly what are the steps going to be taken on this project. You're showing them, we know what we're doing, we're managing this project from start to finish, and we're going to show you how we're going to manage that project. Because you're not like 1.6 million project. They're not going to take, you need to show there's some sort of professional structure in place. Again, ask for planning details. Okay, so again, a lot of groups might have planning, so therefore they're not eligible. Okay, in some cases, they will ask you, has the project planning permission? Is it being approved? Is it in, has a plan application been applied for but not approved yet? Or does the project not require planning? If the project doesn't require planning, they normally look for backup to that. So they look for a letter from either the planning authority, the planning department and the county council, stating that the application or the project doesn't require planning, or a letter which is easier to get from a local architect or engineer stating that the project that's being developed doesn't require planning permission. So for example, if you're a GA club and you're putting up a 1.5 meter fence around the pitch, it doesn't require planning. But if you're putting up, say, a ball net to stop the balls from going out over the fence, they require planning because they're over a certain height. If you put in lighting, for example, flood lighting requires planning. So what we normally would put in there is the planning is granted and the planning reference number as well. So in this case is 18639. And then every project, every application form will look for a rationale. So what's the rationale behind the project? Again, we were shown there was a town community plan done back in 2018 that highlighted the need. There was a consultation process done as part of that. So it was a full public consultation process, consultation and interviews with stakeholders, so local authority, local development companies, local enterprise office, Enterprise Ireland, etc. And then basically we showed that highlighted there was a need for the space within the town. Okay. Again, the group would have worked with, engaged with the county council on the development of phase 1 and phase 2. So we're showing that this work had already started. There was already previous work being done on the project. So this is one that's going to cause problems for some of the projects that are large scale. So with the RDF funding, you have to show how the project basically has been analysed in terms of, has there been a financial analysis done on the project? If it's over €1 million of a project, they will look for a detailed financial analysis to be completed. If it's less than $1 million, they'll also look for information, but not as much information. Now, this is where you probably will need, especially on the RDF application, you will need either an accountant or an economist to do this for you, because they probably won't accept it from someone that's not qualified to present it to them. And this is where you're doing detailed analysis on, say, cost-benefit analysis, return on investment analysis. You're doing your economic impact analysis as well. That can be fairly complex, but they will look first. Before this year, they will look for that normally after the grant has been approved, before you actually draw the money down. But now they're looking for it at the application stage. Okay, and that the public expenditure and public spending code from the Department of Public Expenditure Reform is fairly complex. Okay, so it's not something you want to get lightly. Don't worry about it for most applications, but if you are looking at an RDF application of that scale, you will need to do the analysis. So this will be relevant to all projects and all applications. You have to show, I said this to you last week in the preparatory workshop, you need to show where you've engaged with and consulted with as many people as possible on this project, okay? To say that, a group was met together over a pint some Friday evening and we thought this would be a good idea and we're not putting an application together for it, that doesn't really work. You have to show that, look, we've done a consultation process here with the public. We've had meetings, we've had surveys, we've had interviews, we've got people's feedback, their submissions on everything, and this is what's been found. So we show what the feedback was from their consultation process, okay? So they can say that very, very clearly, the community wants this. The agencies discussed with want us and see they said it's needed. So it's not just come up with a project for the sake of it. This is needed within the community. And again, they consult with the county council, the local enterprise office, the education training board, the local partnership company, and they've been engaged in this process from the outset, and they've all given a level of support to back it. Okay, so they can again prove that this thing has been discussed with the other agencies as well. They put together a business plan. and a feasibility study on the project also, which has also backed up the need for the project. So in your case, for smaller projects, all I need to say there is we've done a consultation process with the community, whether it be through survey, whether it be through meetings, a group meeting, a public meeting, interviews with local people, interviews with the stakeholders like the local authority, local development company, wherever it might be, and just bullet point what the outcome of that process was, what were the needs identified through that process. Okay, so if we're doing a job, let's say for an application for, let's say we did an application for that disability project I was talking about earlier. Back, geez, probably about 8 years ago when I met the group first, it was a group of parents that set up this project for their kids because they thought their kids didn't have much choice when they left secondary school, and they didn't have a choice when they left secondary school. So we met with the parents first as a group, and we asked them what their concerns were, what their needs were, what their issues were. And then we met with the young adults with intellectual disabilities as a group as well, and we asked them what they wanted. And the key feedback we got from that was, when we put into the application form, and every application form since, was one of the guys that was on that focus group and were asking that question, he said, "You're the first person who ever asked us what we wanted." And that was hugely important for us, because that showed that everything was being done based on what people thought these lads wanted, but no one asked them what they wanted. So we came back with listings that they wanted in that project, and that's what we went after. Okay, so our consultation was with people who actually would benefit from the project most. So you can do that very easily with your own projects as well. Okay, it's very simple to do. Hold a public meeting, do public consultation process through surveys, talk to relevant people, and get feedback and ask them what they want, and then put that information into the application. Okay, just stating you did it without writing down what was asked for, or what was the outcomes of that process, I wouldn't trust that you had done it. You know, if someone said to me, "Oh yeah, we've that done," and they're kind of going, "Please don't ask me what we did," and you know, we just tick the box. I want to find out what was the outcome of that. So that's why you put in the outcome like this, bullet pointed. Makes it look like this box. There's probably 12 bullet points there, 10 or 12 bullet points of things that are needed in this building. You know, and you're just basically trying to sell. You're constantly trying to sell the idea to them. Capacity of project partners. In this case, there's partners involved, so you have to go through all their details. But if you were going to say your capacity, again, your capacity is track record, where it's what's your track record as a group in developing projects, managing projects. Doesn't matter how small it is. Okay, if you're a local community group that have done very, very small projects, those projects are big as far as you're concerned. Put them in. We worked with a group in West Limerick years ago. The first project they did was literally they started repairing stone walls in the community, going back probably 30 years ago. Then all the social housing project, they've got a healthcare centre, they've got an organic garden, they've got a community services program, all operating. But the very first project was starting, doing stone walls. That's what it started off. That's how they started building momentum. So it doesn't matter how small a project is, put it in there. Okay. If it's a very small project, kind of make it into a bigger project. Okay. Just to show that you've got a track record of managing these things. Okay, so if you've got other partners involved, you can put in their details as well. Again, a huge part of this would be governance. So how are you going to monitor and manage a project? So again, your project management team. Now, for a smaller project, we would say that normally our committee or our group or organization, let's say it's a development company or some kind of development group or a community council or whatever it might be that you're working for, I would put in there that we're going to have we've assigned a project management team to this project, and they're responsible for seeing the project through to finish. So we're doing work with my soccer club that I'm involved with, and my kids are involved with, and we've set up a project team to manage the development of an AstroTurf pitch. And there's probably 6 of us involved in it, and we've all got specific experience and skills that we bring to the table. So we've got a financial administrator, a solicitor, myself, a business person, and then 2 people are involved in the actual club at the academy level, the academy manager and the grounds manager. Okay, so, and we're all then responsible for managing that project. And that team is the one's going to manage the project from getting funding to getting the gates open when it's done in 6 months' time, hopefully. So again, we're just putting a management team, list the people on the management team, list their experience. Okay, you can bring in outside people on that. So again, we have a design team, architect, engineer, QS. They were appointed to prepare the timber pack. So again, we're showing what the team is. So in this case, we've got the project team, in terms of the people who are on it, their role on it, the design team, what their job is going to be. And then once the project is developed, they're going to be hiring a project manager to manage the project. And that'd be a salary position for that person to manage this project over the course of a year. Again, how are we going to manage policy? Again, oversight, financial oversight. We have, the risk management procedure in place, all this sort of stuff that is shown then that you're managing the project properly, and you're controlling any possible risks that will be there. So I'm sure this quick notes because there's a lot of information on this one. The strategic links I talked about earlier on, how is it linked to national, regional, local strategy? So again, this is asked now in most application forms. Again, what we've done is basically put in here, these are the various different policy documents that this project refers to or is aligned to, and we've explained in each heading how they are. So we've included the policy number that it refers to. If you go to the rural development policy, again, the following objectives under the rural development policy relevant to the development of the project include, and we've literally basically cut and pasted. Okay, and again, the regional spatial strategy, Midlands Regional Enterprise Development Plan, because it's the Midlands area, the Just Transition Plan, which means funding for the Midlands area, County Development Plan, the Local Economic Plan. So you can see we highlighted all the relevant strategies that it's relating to. Okay, now there's a bit of work involved in that, obviously, but as I said last week, you do it once, you don't have to change this every time because it's the same information that you're providing them. Like any of these plans are usually in place for 5 years, so it won't change. So you don't have to go rewrite it every time, you just basically literally cut and paste it each time. Okay, so next one then would be the role of the lead applicant, so we kind of cover that, which we like this. Yes, so again, the policy, so your strategic policies, again, I've written out what policies, the rural development policies that this project relates to. So I've literally written them out, marked them out, and then put in how the project actually aligns to those policies. Again, a big part of this funding is how your project meets climate action plan objectives. So again, how it's going to impact on the climate and environment. So again, if you're asked that question with building projects, so some of you are doing building projects, typically what we put in the building will have minimal impact on surrounding landscapes. So it's not going to be an eyesore. It's going to be designed as a carbon neutral or near zero carbon building. As you know, if it's an old building, that's virtually impossible to do. If it's a new build, you were looking to get it designed straight, it's going to be pretty much a near zero building. You're going to look at how to reduce your energy consumption. In this case, this project is actually a very, very well designed project. They designed this project so that the entire building roof was the main pitch roof is called. That was basically south facing. So the entire roof was going to be one big solar panel that would actually generate enough power for the entire building to be ran off that. They were putting in energy heating systems and controlled heating systems within the building, censored LED lighting within the building, so there was no lighting left on. So they designed this with their architects in such a way that the building itself would be an example of a community building that would be pretty much would be very self-sufficient in terms of cost and in terms of design. Again, they looked like they were designing the building in terms of solar gain, put in EV charging points, etc. So they were showing that, look, with this money, we're going to design a building that's going to be, very energy efficient, will have very, very little carbon, low carbon impact. So again, that's important because that's a key category within the funding. Again, impacts and evaluation. So again, the social economic impacts. They might look for this level of detail in most applications, but they'll look for the impact. So, in this case, the project would have enterprise objectives of providing space for startup businesses, providing a landing pad for established companies. It would create jobs in the area, it would bring jobs back to the area. There's also going to be community arts center, so it would provide space for workshops, rehearsals, events, provide gallery space, provide mixed meeting space for local groups and organizations, provide training and education space for delivery of on-site training. So a lot of people would benefit from this in different ways. We then showed, we kind of basically quantified then the economic impact. So we said there'd be 21 jobs created there. For every job that's created. So for every 10 direct jobs and created, there's 3 indirect jobs. So we looked at the indirect jobs would be 27.3 in total. We looked at the salaries that would be created in the building based on the average salary based in Q3 2021, which is 44,000 euros was the average salary. We then calculated the number of jobs multiplied by the salary and said that the average salary generated per annum in the building was 1.2 million. Okay. Economists will use a multiplier of 1.5, so the impact of that in the local economy will be 1.8 million. So you multiply 1.2 by 1.5, you get 1.8. So we're showing that impact at the local level is 1.8 million. Okay. So what we show then is in terms of that, we can show them that over the course of, let's say, a number of years, the impact in terms of salaries in the local community is far greater than the actual money invested in the project day one. So if they've invested 1.2 million in terms of grant aid, we're showing them there's 1.8 million going back into the local economy every year after that. That's not factoring in payroll taxes to the government in terms of the payroll taxes on the payroll of the building. It's not factoring in the VAT on the spending within the building itself. So on the construction, on the utility costs, on all the spending within the building, and then the VAT that's actually generated on spending within the community by people working in the building. So in other words, we're saying to them that there's a lot more multi-million euros more come back to the exchequer every year based on this 1.2 million investment. Okay, and that's what you need to kind of, and like these numbers aren't just made up. These are figures that the government use in terms of measuring impact. So we're using the same multipliers that they're using. So we're not making these numbers up. We're showing what would happen if there was that number of jobs created in the building. In terms of social impact, we're showing what the impact would be in terms of the non-quantifiable impact would be on the town itself. So in terms of that building is going to be regenerated, that site which is vacant and derelict is going to be regenerated. That street, because you have that project is going to be on a derelict, on pretty much a street that's got a lot of vacant properties, will be a catalyst for developing other projects on that or other properties on that street. It's going to impact on the local community in terms of shops, local schools, clubs, etc. as well. So we're trying to show how this one project can be a catalyst for other projects at a local level. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else there in this that's relevant to you. So this is very much focused purely on RDF. But again, question like financial sustainability, again, you're going to need to show if it's a project where you're borrowing money, or if even not you're borrowing money, but if this project is going to have operational costs each year, you need to show how the project is sustainable and viable, right? So what we showed in this was that there'd be rental income generated from the tenants in the building, from the offices in the building, the rental income from meeting rooms, activity rooms. They would have events and exhibitions in the building as well, so you're ticketing from that, so the revenue generated from that. There'd be an annual fundraising and sponsorship program, which we've explained more detail on in the business plan that we submitted with it. In your case, you've shown something similar. So how are you going to make money to keep the building going or keep the project going? Okay, now it might be an annual fundraising plan, and that might be all you're doing, or you might be able to generate some revenue from the project as well in terms of rental or events or something like that. So just show them though how you're going to generate some revenue, because they'll ask the question, if we give them money to build this or develop this project, how are they going to sustain the project afterwards when they don't have grant aid to sustain it? Okay, so basically we give you money to build it, but how are you going to keep the building open? You've got to be able to show that in the application form, how you're going to do that. So these are kind of the options you put in there. They might look for more information on this. If they do, put it in. If they don't, just you can say, look, we've got rental income, an annual fundraising sponsorship program. And you can also put in there that, like, we have a proven track record of generating fundraising sponsors each year if you had that. Okay. Sustainability, additionality, and then the finances. So they look for every application, look for this and break down the financials. So what the total cost is. They will get 80% funding, which is 1.2 million in this case, and they've got a couple matching funds of 350,000. They got approval of a loan of 275 on this project, and the rest of them would be coming from their own sources, right? So we're going to break down the project costs. So admin cost 60, construction cost 1.3, professional fees 86, and then contingency of 10%, which is total 1.6. Okay, just checking if there's anything else there. Okay, no, that's it. So that's okay. That's got a very long application form. The reason I picked that one because it's got all the questions will be asked in any application and some more as well. What I'm just going to do is going to stop the share for a second. Have you any questions on that one? Because the next one I'll show you is the more recent application. It's out for community centres, and that's an online application process, and I'll go through that with you. Any questions on any of that we just covered there in terms of some of the questions they might ask and how you might answer them? No? Okay, so you're all either very confused or it's making not a lot of sense. Or you left panicked. So no questions on that, no? Okay. The next one then is this. You might be familiar with this application that's out at the moment. The deadline is July. I can't remember the date in July, but it's in July anyway. Was that on this? So this is the Community Centres Investment Fund, which was announced there about a month ago by the department. And this kind of created an awful lot of excitement across the country because people thought at long last we got money for community centres, because it was difficult to get money for community centres, especially when NEDA funding wasn't available. The problem is that under the categories 1, 2, and 3, there's limits as to the number of projects that they will support nationally. So under category 3, which is the largest amount, which is projects up to €300,000, which is a lot of money, they will only fund 16 projects nationally, which is tiny. Under category 2, which is up to €100,000 of funding available, they'll only fund 31 projects nationally, again, which is tiny. Category 1, I think, is about up to €25,000. I think they're going to fund about 400 projects there. So there's not an awful lot of money to go around on this one, okay? But there is a number of different groups that are applying for it, and we've been asked to look at a few for some as well. But everyone kind of thought there was going to be plenty of money out there for this. There's not going to be that much money, especially at the higher rates. Anyway, won't be. So this is the guidelines that they provide on their website. So again, it basically makes it very clear what to check this. So use your checklist to make sure that you have all the items you need to complete your application. So governing documents. The governing documents are your constitution if you've got a constituted group, or your memos and articles of association if you're a company limited by guarantee. Your latest financial statements. If you're a company, you'll have financial accounts done. If you're just a constituted group, you might have just a basic income expenditure statement. Your project details and costs. So whatever your project is what project you're doing, what the costs are. So if you're doing refurb of a community centre, if you're doing an energy upgrade of a community centre, adding an extension, putting in a kitchen, putting in flooring, whatever it might be, you have to have all your project details ready and the costs associated with those as well. Quotation for works. So one quote if you're going for category 1, 2 quotes if you're going for category 2 or 3. Okay. And this is one that catches a lot of people as well, is evidence of your ownership or long-term lease of the building. Okay, so if you own the building, you have proof of that. Okay, so you need to have your deeds somewhere. If you've got a lease on a building, you need to have a copy of the lease available. Okay, again, a lot of groups have no idea what that information is or who has that information. This is going through the application form then. So you'd be asked to verify your organization details. So with this application, you have to register first. So you have to register on the portal, get your access code, your password and access to access the portal. So it asks you to verify your details, save and you continue, give your organization background. So now you're into what types of facilities does your community centre have and what are the facilities or what are the activities offered. So you're allowed 2,000 characters there. Now 2,000 characters is not a lot. That's not 2,000 words, that's 2,000 characters. When you fill in this on screen, in the section on screen, you will stop at the point where you've gone over 2,000 characters. That's why I was saying I would always do these in a Word document. Editors do word count to count number of characters, make sure you're not going over 2,000 characters, and then read it a couple times, make sure it reads properly, and then cut it into or paste it into the actual application form online. Okay. So again, what we've seen coming back with a lot of the groups we're working with on these is they keep it very vague, right? They call like we provide meeting rooms, we provide a kitchen, we provide a hall, that's fine. That's what they provide. That's grand. It's asked what they provide, and they're saying that. but show like what use is getting of that. Again, emphasize the value of that hall. Like, so on the hall currently we have 200 kids playing there on a Saturday, and they have no space. We need to expand. So you're trying to use every section to sell the project to the person who's going to give you funding. Okay, so when I'm filling these in, I'll show what the facilities are, and I'll make a point saying that we're doing an awful lot with the limited facilities we have, and we could do so much more for better facilities. Okay. Now, back in the day, we used to be putting in photographs and stuff like that in to kind of, show the kind of quality of facilities they had at the moment, and then show maybe an artist's impression of what the facilities could look like. But you're not allowed to do that anymore now because you don't have enough room to do it in these application forms. So you have to use them wording and explain what you're trying to do. So most groups take these options, they literally list what they do, but they don't go on and explain much more with that, okay? And that means then they're comparing your project with another project. And they're saying, well, why should I give this community center the exact same as this other community center money? Why should I pick one over the other? Give them a reason to pick yours over the other one, okay? How many individual members, users do you currently have? Okay. Again, that might be difficult to quantify. So you might put in there that, let's say if it's membership based, you might say that we've got, 200 active members, and throughout the course of the year, we would have X amount of people using the building every week, right? And they're not going to look for proof of that because they can't. You can't give them proof of it. They're not going to look for it anyway. But you can explain where those numbers are coming from. So you could say that, we have an active retire group that's got 20 people and they use it once a week. We've got a parent college group who have on average 15 people and they use it once a week. We have a gym in there that's got membership of 100 people. You can make sure your numbers are high, okay? Because again, you're looking at the value for money. For the past few years, has your organization received any funding? Do you remember the template I showed you in the slideshow a while ago? With details of the funds you got previously? That's why you need to keep record of what funds you got, because they asked for it. The year, the name of the program, the funder, the amount awarded. If you're struggling to find that detail because you haven't recorded what you got in the past, this is going to take you time. Okay, having that template that I showed you earlier. So let's see if I can do a new share and just back to it again. That grants, sorry, not that one. Template. That one, the previous grants template. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, you have that. If you have that done because you're well prepared, you're going to have no problem filling in this section here. Okay, is everyone on the organization details page there? Just to be sure. Yeah.
So would you just remind me, Tom, which department this is all through?
This is it's administered through PUBL, I think. So it's the Department of Community and Rural what's Community Rural Affairs, isn't it? Yeah. So this fund is through, and I think it's administered through PUBL, I think. Yeah, because they already have looked at, you've already submitted your financial statements to PUBL. So PUBL are doing the administration of it, but it's the department that's funding it. Okay, so just go back to that. Sorry, if you look at say the so your previous grants, you have to fill that in. Okay, your organization documentation. So you basically click on this to add your documents. So you click on add documents and you go to your file that I would have showed you earlier, where all your stuff is stored, and you click on that and you download you upload your documents onto it. Again, if you don't have those documents in digital format, you gotta get them in digital formats. You just scan them or get whoever did work for you to send them as a PDF document to you. Okay. Just be careful that some people have updated their memos and active association or their constitution because they might have applied for charitable status in the last while, or they might have applied to the regulator. And if you apply to the charitable regulator, you have to have your memos and active association need to be amended to meet the criteria of the regulator. And I've seen in some cases where the organization have uploaded an older constitution or an older memos and active association. And obviously that's not correct. So just make sure that you have up-to-date documentation, okay? Some people just send in the wrong files because again, they don't have them filed properly. Again, your latest financial accounts and statements, can you add your documents and you upload your financial statements. Now you might have, if you've been if you've a company, your accountant might have only done up to 2020 or 2021. So you won't have statements for 2022. Some organizations are very well organized, and they might have management accounts up to date. So they might have, let's say, an income and expenditure or management accounts from January to May. So they submit last year's financials and they submit the current financials as well if you had them. Okay, but like you can only submit the latest annual ones that are done by your accountant. So whatever the last set of accounts were done by the accountant will be submitted. Okay, you should have a copy of those, because they're your statements. Your accountant will have sent you those, or if they haven't, they should have had, and they should do now. Another thing is make sure it's the signed version of those statements, not a draft version, not an unsigned version. Okay, the only official ones that are signed off by yourselves. Okay, so again, a lot of times your accountant will send you a draft set of financials. You keep those. You might have signed off on the original or the originals, and you don't have a copy of those. You need to get a copy of them because you need to submit the signed financials. Okay. So again, you pick, save, and continue. Move on. Governance and controls. Again, how often does the committee board meet? So if you meet weekly, fortnightly, monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, every 6 months, once a year. Now, I presume you meet more than once a year. If you don't, that's a problem. Every 6 months is a problem. Quarterly, a problem, I would say. Bi-monthly, at least, more likely you're meeting monthly. Okay. Again, this is drop down. So you don't have anything else nearly pick which one is relevant to you. Right, this is where you're back to project management now, okay? So please provide details on how the committee or board supposed to manage the project, including any risks. Okay, so that's where you put in about your project teams. You're forming a project team or project management team to oversee the project. If it's a building project, which in this case most of them will be, there'll be building works involved, there'll be structural works involved. On that project team, you would have either an architect or engineer that's contracted who will oversee the building works. Okay, so they're going to be employed or contracted by you to be the supervisor on the project and would sign off on all the works done on the project. Okay, then you might have someone that would be on the team that's responsible for the financing and making sure it's done to budget and making sure that the tendering procedure is completed properly, etc. You identify any risks, so you can say we've done a risk assessment on the project. That might be things like, say, health and safety risks, financial risks, maybe increasing costs, which not maybe definitely increasing costs in the building costs. How are you going to manage those risks? Okay, so they want to see that we give you 100,000 euros, that you're not come back and say, geez, we thought the building was going to cost us 110,000, it's actually going to cost us 108,000. We can't proceed with the project. They want to avoid that. So they want to make sure that you've got a team in place that's going to manage the actual project. So I would always say that if you've got a committee, if you've got a board, the board assigns a commission to the project, bring in expertise like your design team, like your specialists. If there's a coordinator or administrator on board, if they're going to be on that committee, they might be chairing that committee and then feeding back to the main board. But this wouldn't be done by just the board and the board only. There'd be a separate committee responsible for it. Okay, really important. You're given again 2,000 characters explaining that process. Again, it's very, very important. It's probably one of the more important questions they'll ask. So again, you can see here is the project should be clear on the roles and responsibilities to monitor risks and ensure timely corrective actions through the agreed process. Anywhere there's building works, you need to have someone sign off on the building works done. That has to be professional, an engineer and architect. Okay, so you can't do that yourself, you're not qualified to do so. Project. So what category are you applying for? Category 1, 10 to 25,000. Category 2, 25 to 100,000. Category 3, 100,000, 300,000. Now, as I said, Category 3 is going to be limited number of projects nationally. But you'll see here that if you go for Category 1, up to maximum 25,000 euros, you don't require any matching funds. They'll fund that 100%, which is very unusual, but that's what they will do. If it's the Category 2, they look for 5% matching fund. Okay, so you have to show 5% matching funds towards the project. Okay, if it's Category 3, they'll also want to see 5% matching funding. So if you're applying for 300,000 euros, that means then that the spend is 350,000 euros. That your overall cost is 350. You're applying for 300,000. You're showing matching funds of 150. Okay, Again, if it's category 1, you don't show a matching fund, which is great. Title for your project, come up with a name for it. So it could be the community center development project, or it could be the energy upgrades to our building project, whatever it is. That's not a huge issue in terms of title. However, it's going to be used for your project for now on in terms of correspondence, in terms of any kind of case studies you might do in your project, or any returns to be done in the project to use that title. Provide a short summary, 2,000 characters. So it could be an energy upgrade to a building. So you could say that last year we conducted an energy audit on our building, and the energy audit highlighted the following issues with our building. We're now seeking funds to make the following changes to the building infrastructure. So insulation, LED lighting, insulated flooring, changing out the heating system, upgrading the, maybe the roof, all these different things. So again, you're just basically given a summary of the project. But within the summary, you're constantly selling why you're doing it. Okay, what's the importance of it? When your project will start. So again, you actually you download this calendar here. You click on calendar, and you pick a date on the calendar. Okay. Again, if you don't know, you might just basically, you might think, okay, the grant is going to be assessed in July. You might presume that it's going to be announced probably in September. So you might put on a start date of October. Okay. And normally it depends on the project. If it's a very large construction project, you might give yourself 6 to 12 months. If it's a smaller project, give yourself maybe 3 or 4 months. Okay. They normally don't stick you to these dates. Okay. Because like you could say that currently it's virtually impossible to get out to do work in terms of trades because they're so busy. So you might have a start date in mind of, let's say, September, but you might be getting it to start in October. So they're not going to stick you to these dates. This one an idea in terms of when their funding will be drawn down. Because you don't know when they're going to give you the money anyway. So you can't pick an exact date. It has to be just kind of an estimated date. The results. So then please describe the upgrades, improvements your project plans to make to the community center facility and or any equipment you would buy as part of the project. So again, it's a bit similar to the question up here, in terms of summary of the project. This is where you list the works you're going to do and why you're doing it, right? So again, the ones we're doing at the moment is mostly upgrades to community centers. Some are buying additional equipment. One's getting kitchen equipment and they're doing daycare and they're upgrading all their kitchen equipment. Another is replacing the roof or part of the roof, and the others are doing energy upgrades in terms of installation works. So again, you don't have to explain those because it's very straightforward. How will the project benefit your community? Offer more new services, engage more people groups. This is another important question. So, for example, if you're say upgrading your kitchen, you say currently we offer basic meals for after school in the building, but we've identified a need for more older people who are looking for they're coming in for the daycare, and we want to provide them with a hot meal every day, or hot teen school in the morning, hot meal at lunchtime, a tea in the afternoon before they go back home. Our current kitchen isn't up to scratch. We need to invest in it. If we invest in it, we're going to be able to feed 100 people a week. That takes people out of food poverty, for example, right? Or we're going to be able to provide kids with a meal after school and the after school. So kids that are going hungry because the parents can't afford to provide them with nourishing food, when they go to after school, they'll be getting a hot meal every day. So that child is going to go home with a full belly every day, and that's what you say. So that's the impact of it. So if you invest 30 grand in our kitchen, this is what we can actually do for you and for the community. Okay. Some of them might be extending their facilities, so allows them to offer more services, etc. One group we worked with, not in this fund, but in the previous fund, they had a very large hall. The hall was freezing. They had a very active retired group who wanted to do things like bingo and have daycare and also the meals and events for their members, but they couldn't run it because the hall was too cold. They were sitting there with jackets and scarves and hats and fan heaters. It wasn't the most ideal thing. And they got a grant to retrofit, to put in a suspended floor into their hall, mezzanine floor. Got that insulated, put in a proper heating system in there. And they went from no use at hall to using that hall probably 5 days a week for both for older people in the community and for younger people in the community to use it. So very, 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 and I won't say minimal investment, but the investment creators probably increased their capacity by about 100%. which was huge and it's still going very strong to this date. How would the project encourage the expansion of marginalized groups to use your community centre? Okay, this is a tricky enough question to answer because, you know, you might already be supporting the expansion of marginalized groups anyway, right? But if you're upgrading your centre, how does that actually help you encourage more to use it, right? One of the answers we could give here is that, for example, your building might be accessible. So someone on a wheelchair can't access the building currently because we have a step at the main door and our bathroom facilities aren't fully accessible. So we're going to rip out the toilet facilities, we're going to put in brand new toilet facilities, and we're going to put in a ramp at the main door, and we're going to make our building accessible to everyone within the community. We might have a first floor in our building that's not accessible because it's only a staircase. We're putting in a lift into the building to make it more accessible. You might have maybe visually impaired. So we work with a group who had braille signage put into the building in terms of safety, in terms of lights and things like that, for people who are visually impaired. So it depends. It might be one of the projects worked on years and years ago was a project for supporting one-parent families. So women who were trying to get back into the workforce who were parenting alone. One of the biggest issues they had was that they had small kids, so they couldn't attend training courses, education courses. So one of the groups we worked with provided a preschool within their community centre so that they could actually bring their child with them from not a preschool but a creche. Creche was wasn't a full creche, but it was like a child-minded service basically within the building. So the women could bring their children to the training course, drop the kid off into the service that was there, and attend the training course. Okay, so that was supporting one-parent families in the community. What they were doing was providing an extra facility within their centre to provide that service. So there's ways you can look at it. A lot of sports clubs we work with build additional dressing rooms to encourage more girls to get involved in sports. So if they only have 2 dressing rooms, they don't have male and female dressing rooms. So therefore, girls can't get involved, women can't get involved. They build additional dressing rooms. So that would be saying, okay, we're increasing our space to provide opportunities for girls and women to get involved in the sport we play. So a lot of clubs do that. They increase their facilities to allow greater participation by females in their club. So there's lots of ways you can answer this question. What happens though is a lot of people will just put in, not lies, but they just put in this random stuff. Oh yeah, if we increase the facilities, we'll be able to encourage more people to use it. But how does it work? Okay, the access one is probably the biggest one. Again, in terms of, or for example, if it's say maybe refugees, asylum seekers that you're providing, okay, the facilities increasing facilities is not going to make much difference, but we might say that we're increasing our facility. We're also providing support and support workers to work with new people coming into our community. So that you're showing basically how you're going to actually use the money and use it properly. This is back into the need for project. So again, back to what I said earlier on, you have to be able to show the need. So how did you do it? Did you do a community plan? Did you do a community consultation process? You might say that we asked the people using the building what was the problems of the building, why weren't they using it as much? When would they use it more, or under what circumstances would they use it more? And this is the feedback we got, and that's why we're doing the work. We did an energy audit, we did a public consultation process, we talked to the local engineer, we looked at other buildings in the area, we did all these things. Okay, so again, you guys show how the need for the project was backed up. And your financial details, again, what's the total cost of your project, including any match funding, what's the grant you're seeking. The next question is your organization registered for VAT? Most community volunteer organizations aren't registered for VAT. The reason why you have to answer this question, if you're registered for VAT, let's say your project is costing 30,000 euros plus VAT. Okay, or just make it easier for myself. Let's say it's costing 10,000 euros plus VAT, so it's costing 13%, so 10 grand plus 13.5%. So this case costing 11,350 euros, including that. If you're not registered for that, you can put in the total cost of the project as being 11,350 euros. If you are registered for that, you can only claim for the VAT exclusive amount of 10,000 because you'll be claiming the VAT back from revenue anyway. Now, most organizations aren't registered for that, so that's not an issue. However, in most grant applications, I don't ask for it here, you have to normally provide a letter from revenue stating you're not registered for that. I know for legal funding, they look for a letter from revenue stating that this organization is not registered for that. that means you're allowed to put in the full amount on the quotation, the full amount, including that when you're putting your figures up here. Sorry, up here you're putting the total amount on the quotation, not just the net amount. Okay, hope that makes sense. And the budget, again, this is where you're adding your budget on this to break down the costs, and this is where you're adding your quotations. Okay, so again, your quotation needs to be either emailed to you in a PDF document, or if it's posted to you, you need to scan it and digitize it so you can actually upload it. Okay, so then they will look for necessary documentation, so it's the back for being organized, evidence of planning permission, evidence of a lease or a rental agreement. Has to be for a minimum of 5 years. So if you're releasing your building, the lease has to be a minimum of 5 years on it, which is not that long. No, it's 25 years. If it's a leased building, you have a letter from your owner of the building or landlord that's allowing you to actually do works to the building. That's an important thing. Some communities I'm working with would have the properties leased from the local authority. There's 2 or 3 I've worked in last year they were renting the property from the local authority, Kerry County Council in this case, and they had to get a letter from Kerry County Council to state that they were allowed to do works to the building. Okay, that can take an awful lot of time if you're dealing with local authorities. So something to kind of get moving on if you have to do that. Supporting evidence of the quotation. So if you have to have quotations, which we said already, again, you have to provide those quotes. And then if you've got category 2 or 3, you've got a planning permission. Again, if it's category 2 or 3, category 2, you have to 20 years minimum lease. Category 3 is 25-year minimum lease. Okay. Again, so they're very clear in terms of documentation, and you add your documents here to it. Okay. And you hit save and continue, and then you're basically ticking the boxes. So sometimes it asks for questions like if you've got sensitive information in the document that you don't want disclosed, okay, under the freedom of information, you've got to state that. Sometimes people put in there that they don't want their financial statements disclosed, or maybe something else. Typically, or their lease agreements, maybe or something like that. There's a lease in place. They might want that. You know, that's sensitive document, legal document. They don't want that. They don't want that disclosed either. You tick the box, confirm, save and continue. You review it. So again, this provides you with a project review or an application review to make sure it's done correctly, and then you hit submit. Okay, or you print this document as well for the futures to save it for future use, and you submit. So once you have the application done, you submit it. So basically, again, allows you to review it, make sure it's done all right, before you submit the document. So that's kind of standard, and it's obviously relevant because it's the most up-to-date application that's out there at the moment for funding. But that's very typical of an application form, an online application form, as you go through it. Again, you can see there that if you don't have the documentation ready on file, you won't be able to submit the application. You won't have the documents to upload. Now, you've got plenty of time, because July before it's done, but a lot of people say that's taking loads of time, and then they wait till the last week to start doing it, and they realize, oh, I don't have this document, I don't have that document, and it's July, so people are on holidays, so you won't be able to get the documentation off anyone. So if you are doing this application form, and you are applying for the Communities Central Fund, make sure you start gathering the data, gathering your information and documentation now as soon as you possibly can, so you're ready for July. Okay, so that's the Community Central Fund. So there's an example of the application process. Okay, so any questions on that? There's a lot to go through, but hopefully that gives you an idea of what's involved, the level that's involved. I hope it hasn't scared you off in terms of the process, because it's not as difficult as it might seem looking at the screen there, listening to me talking about it, right? What I would say to you, and this is really important, don't be afraid of writing a grant application, okay, at all. Practice at them, write it. You don't have to submit it straight away. Give a couple of goes at it, right? The first one you do, and you do properly, takes a lot of time, okay? But so when I look at this, if you're applying for funding, let's say you're applying for category 1 funding there, which is the Community Central Fund, and it's about €25,000, okay? And in your case, it's going to take an awful lot of time to put this application together. I'm going to go out, try to put it together. I got to spend time at it. I got to get all the documentation. Compare that to the amount of time it would take to raise €25,000 fundraising. Like you're talking about multiple hours. of stress, heartache, standing out in the cold and the rain, begging people for money, knocking on doors for money, driving people mad looking for money, as opposed to spending time in a nice warm kitchen table with a laptop, a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or whatever you want to have, writing a grant application. Okay, so people say, oh, there's too much work involved in it. There's an awful lot less work involved in this than there is in actual fundraising, an awful lot less work involved. If you put together a really good application, okay, that gets approved, that now becomes your foundation for every single application. All right. When I do an application for a group, I keep that application because they come back to me next year, look, how can we do an application for another project? I don't have to start from scratch again. I have about 70% of the work done already first. If I'm doing an application for a group in, say, Cork, like you're in Cork there, the information in terms of the strategic policy stuff, the national development policy, national rural policy, national development plan, that's standard for everyone in the country. If you're in Cork and I'm doing one for ye, and I'm looking at the Cork County Development Plan, if I'm doing another one for another group in Cork, I don't have to rewrite that. It's the same stuff I'm putting in for that project, okay? So there's not duplication involved in these things as well, but you have to do one really, really good. It's like having a very good CV. That becomes your CV for life, and you just tweak it then when you look at different jobs. You don't rewrite it every time. It's the same stuff that's in it. Same with grant application. The only thing that changes a lot in the grants application would be the committee members might change, contact details might change, the project you're applying for will change. Everything has to be talked about today or this evening. And you see those similarities there in the grant, the questions in your debt application and the other application and what I went through on the PowerPoint. What you find is that it's the same information you're just giving them the whole time. The only thing that will change really is the project. The actual project you're going for is going to be different each time, which you might be applying for a number of grants for the same project. So then it won't change. You do the same thing. It's basically completely, just replicate that application a number of different times. As I said, and I don't know, repeat myself, but it's worth repeating. It's down to being organized. And it's down to having those files and documents in place. That's what kills people, that they don't have those things in place. They're relying on solicitors. I hope there's no solicitors here, but solicitors are slow in getting back. Very slow. If you're even local authority solicitors, God help us, that's like hounding them to get information back off them. You come into the summer months, and I'm guaranteeing, I don't guarantee it. I'm convinced that governments have deadlines for applications now in the summer months. This is probably being kind of conspiracy theorists, but anyway, having in the summer months because they know that people are on holidays, volunteers on holidays, community groups sometimes close down for August because kids are off school, whatever it might be, and people aren't around. So it reduces the amount of applications coming through because people just don't have time to do them, or they can't get the supporting documentation because whoever has the supporting documentation is over in Marbella, some of themselves. And you're there.
It's the same when they put the deadline early in January or late in December or something. Yeah. And
I'm we're thinking, when's the worst time possible to do this? Yeah, pick that date. Okay.
Yeah.
Or they set a deadline at noon. And 12 o'clock noon or 5 o'clock. Never just presume this can be closed business is the deadline. And then the application at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they realize it closed at 12. And then it's like, then they leave the country because they want to be killed by their committee because they missed it, and that happens a lot, an awful lot happened just very recently, nearly happened to us. We were 5 minutes to 12 o'clock and we realized that was oxygen tank time, and I got in literally 1 minute to 12, with probably loads of spelling mistakes, but that just happened. So again, look, there's been organized really is the key thing with this. You notice there the application form is the same questions pretty much across the board. Okay, the key thing, go back to this, I'm going to finish up on this. It is selling. If you're selling your project to a person that has money, you need to push that at every possible point of the application form. You need to convince them, get into their head that this group need this money, this group deserves this money. Go emotional, get very emotional with it as well. Like we would put in stuff like years ago we would have shown pictures of kids, staged pictures of kids playing in the basketball court with broken glass. Staged. We actually broke glass, put into the basketball court, and put kids standing around and said, "Look, this is what they're currently playing in. This is shocking. Give them proper facilities." I'm like, "Oh, geez, I can't believe they're playing in the place of that." And that's what you show them. You show them the hardship, make the worst case possible, and say like, without this money, their lives be miserable. And that's what you're really saying to them, in an application form, because you're trying to convince them to fund you as opposed to fund someone else. and it has to be throughout the application, constantly reminding them. So use your 2,000 characters. Don't put in like one-liner answers, because that's a waste of valuable, pitching time to sell your idea to them, sell your concept to them, and sell your project to them. Okay. Any final questions before we wrap up?
Could I ask
Can I
just? Oh,
Wait.
sorry.
We're done
Yeah.
yet?
I was just going to ask, this the Community Center Investment Fund. We're the Family Resource Center.
Yeah.
Would we have any chance to qualify, or?
I was talking to Family Resource Centre last week in South Kerry, and they were informed that they weren't eligible.
No. Okay.
So
I thought so.
I stopped the car in anger because I was in the car when she told me, because I can't understand why. Because of all centres, not saying that our centres don't provide the same service, but Family Resource Centre provides multiple services. And you are a community centre, you're community-based.
Yeah, the kind of, yeah.
I wouldn't accept no for an answer. If I were you, I'd be arguing the point that why are we not? I don't know who told them that. They just said they weren't. I'm not convinced that they're not, because it's not on the criteria. It doesn't say that they're not. It's possibly because they're funded through, two stuff that.
Yeah, we're the same. Yeah.
But there's always, I'm this is speaking out loud. I'm not saying do this, but you could look at, is there a way of looking at the structure within, the building, for example? Could you set up a separate, I suppose, going to timeout, set up a separate entity, so that to be a separate entity that would own the building or run the building, and it would lease the building back to the Family Resource Centre, but that company could apply for funding then, because it's not the resource centre applying for funding.
All right. Yeah, our building is owned by SVP, so that would, yeah.
That would.
I wouldn't know.
But I'd argue it. I wouldn't accept no. I'd say, can we, they say no, definitely not, then there's no point. But I don't accept no first time around. They have to be the rationale as to why they won't do it, Just ask, could you get another group? Is there another group within the building using the building for any other services that you support?
No, not really, no.
Okay, because that's nothing you can do. That group could apply.
Yeah, but we're the Resource Center. We always run the childcare service. Some of them they run only family support and mental health, so we're partially funded by Pobl as well.
Okay, so the childcare won't get you won't get funded.
Yeah,
for childcare either.
no.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Sorry, we're done.
Thank you.
Martina?
Yeah, Tom, I just a question there about when you're submitting your costs, can you allow for contingency with the rising costs at the moment? What kind of a percentage would you be putting in?
At the moment. Could be anything.
I know, like how long is piece of string?
You probably find it that if you put in a quotation, this is where it's getting very, very tricky for groups, because builders aren't giving quotations. Okay, because if a builder gives a quotation to you today, or say in July for the fund, right? They know that fund won't be approved maybe for a month, 2 months. The project will start for 3 months. At that stage, your quote's going to be invalid. It's causing massive problems for groups that got quotes in last year for works they're starting now. The builders come back saying, well, that quote we gave you last year is now 40% dearer. They don't have the funds to do it. So there's an awful lot of issues nationally. And I can't believe it's not being publicized or being on the papers more. It's causing mayhem basically within the sector. So what I would say is if they look for quotations, so your quotation is going to be the cost. Your builder might, or whoever on the quotation might put down that this is valid for 90 days, whatever only, or they might put in a contingency on the quotation. If they allow you for a breakdown on the costings, and you don't need quotes to back it up, in this case you do, but if you don't need quotes to back it up, we would normally put in 10% contingency, you don't need about 20.
Okay.
At least 20.
Okay.
But to get the quotation builders is a problem now. They're terrified of quoting like.
Yeah, I did the RRDF and I did put in contingency for that, but we're putting for 3.2 million. So we had a huge contingency, but for something like the smaller grant, the community centre grant, I'm just wondering, would 10% be allowed, and would you just put it in?
But because the quotation, they're going to base the costings on the quotation that comes in. So you'll figure quotation for €20,000, that's what the cost is going to be. Because your costings on the application form have to match the quotations that are coming in.
Okay.
So, and they'll be going to the lowest quote. So if you get say 2 quotes, you can pick the lowest quote, that goes into the cost.
Okay.
So it's your builder that's going to factor in the contingency really.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Martin. Anna, do you have another question there?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to ask about eligibility because we were actually thinking of applying for this funding as well.
What do you do?
So it's a Centre for Sustainability, but we host a lot of community groups and events and things. The building is owned by the church, by the Missionaries of the Sacred Heart, and we have a license with them for 5 years.
Right.
Do you think we would be eligible? We're
You should like they're
we're a not-for-profit company.
yeah, on the application guidelines, it just states clearly who's not eligible, and I can't see why you wouldn't be.
Oh,
So
okay. So as long as we're not
you'd be eligible, but
one of those.
yeah, you would be eligible. But
Okay.
list on the app on the web. If you go to the website, there's got on the guide.
Yeah. No, I was just looking at it now, but I just wondered if if
Yeah, no,
that was
you would be eligible.
my interpretation was correct. Okay, that's
Yeah, drive on. Yeah.
thanks.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we've got a final workshop next Monday night, which is on fundraising strategy. So it's looking at how you get the matching funds to match these grants that you're going after and keep after the grant is long gone and you got a building, a new improved building, how you raise money on an ongoing basis to keep the place going. So we're looking at different types of fundraising and sponsorship strategies that we would use and we would advise our clients to use. So thanks for your Kevin.
You just remind me of one small thing. I think at your original introduction, you were talking about fundraising and you mentioned a group, I think it was TOMAR, TOMAR.
Yeah, Tomar Trust.
Right.
Tomar Trust.
Yeah, can you tell me a little about that, or will you be telling us next week?
We'll be talking about next week anyway, but it's basically if you go onto their website, they're basically a charter. They're like the JP McManus Foundation. They're a charitable trust. So their donation that donates money to different projects. They're actually based out of Cork, North Cork somewhere. So if you go on their website, you can go through what their process is in terms of applying for funds. So they will support projects in different counties. To be very similar to, you probably know the JP McManus Foundation, similar to that, or similar to the Ireland's funds, if you're more. But I'll be going through those next week anyway. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good stuff. Okay, hopefully see you all next week then. And apologies for going over time. I know we're going to get over time, but there's a lot to cover in this one. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.